to ask in a moment that it be called out of order. Since President Trump was elected, we've all had to face his agenda. I have, over a year ago, said I'm sorry that we have to deal with it. It basically is not a city responsibility. My sympathy, my empathy, my personal relationships with undocumented individuals, I know the anxiety. And quite frankly, I think most Houstonians experienced the anxiety as we watched the nation and the disruption that occurred in most major cities. I made a commitment then to follow the law, be consistent, transparent, and that is what has kept the turmoil out of Houston. I get calls from major city officials across the nation, across Texas, asking us how are we able, as a major city, as diverse as we are, to be able to be as reasonable and consistent as we've been. Just for example, I got a report recently that there were only 70 ICE officers in our region. Minneapolis had 3,700 at one time because it was politicized in so many of our major cities. So we've been consistent, followed the law, and today we need to deal with the item. I want to thank the members for engaging in the process. The sponsors of Prop A have been reasonable. I've never seen a piece of legislation in 50 years or served in the legislature that could not be improved. So today we have a revised version of Prop A, item 28. I think it is consistent with HPD practices. HPD practices are to follow, respect the Fourth Amendment, and then also HPD will furnish its data to anyone that asks for it, certainly anyone around this horseshoe. So I think the revised version is a ratification of the good policies that HPD is conducting. It's an emotional issue. People can disagree. I'm sorry that some of our witnesses and speakers have tried to politicize it, but that's one of our successes coming out of my office is we're not going to politicize something that's sensitive. We've traveled across Houston, certainly coffee with police last week in the East End, Denver Harbor Civic Club last night. People across the city appreciate the seriousness that we've handled this matter, and I'm just thankful that we live in Houston, Texas, and we're following the law, state and federal laws, and our ordinance will be consistent with that. With that said, I'll be glad to yield to anyone, but I really do want to thank the members for the process that's been followed, and I'm ready to have a healthy discussion. Councilman Salinas.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm glad to hear it sounds like you support the ordinance. As you know, more than 50 community organizations have urged us to take the action that we put forth on this Prop A. I want to thank my co-sponsors, Councilmember Pollard and Councilmember Cateman, for joining us in this effort. And I want to thank everyone in the community that came out and demanded that we act. I think this is a positive step forward. This is building on the step forward that was taken a few weeks back, and I hope we continue to take steps forward to improve our position and reducing our cooperation with ICE to the bare minimum that's required under state law. But this is a positive step forward. It was a step that was needed. The community has demanded it, and I'm glad to see that we're going to pass it today.
Well, thank you for your work, leadership. I'm supporting it because I think it makes a statement that we've listened, and it's following the current practices of HPD of respecting the Fourth Amendment and furnishing the data to any member of this panel. So thank you, and I will yield to Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to just start by saying that those that came to speak in favor of the ordinance, that I hear you. I understand the intent behind what we're trying to do with this ordinance, and I think we all want to see safe communities. But I also want to be honest, and this policy will not take away the fear that so many families are living with every day. I know because I talk to them. I know their stories and their challenges that they're being faced with. The fear that comes from lived experiences, from what people are seeing in their neighborhoods, in their workplaces, at their daily lives, and more recent conversations have helped create more fear, unfortunately. And no matter what or how this policy is adjusted, the fear just doesn't disappear. From the beginning, I have been saying this: you have to be thoughtful and intentional with our words and our work. So if we're serious about public policy, then we have to be serious about the trust as well. Because when people are afraid, they don't call the police, they don't report crimes, and they make every one of us less safe. The real work isn't just the policy that is being passed today. It's actually showing up, as the mayor mentioned. It's bringing HPD and the community in the same room. It's having honest conversations. It's listening, being present, and building relationships over time, not just in this moment like this. The work that I've been talking about, that's what I will stay committed to, because real safety doesn't just come from policy alone. It comes from trust, and that trust is built over time. The work done in community policing has been done decades after the Moody Park riots. And a lot of those challenges that we've been seeing more recently have been eroding that trust. What I'll be doing today is voting yes, because I'm going to be supporting the community as well. But the real work is ahead of us, and I look forward to continuing showing up in community. And I challenge those that came to public session as well to help with this work. I can't do this alone. We can't do this alone. And find opportunities where you can connect our local law enforcement, who are doing great work, boots on the ground, with the community. Continue doing that work. That is what we need to continue doing, whether this ordinance passes or not. Showing up is most important. So again, I'll be supporting, but I think the real work really is going to be bringing local law enforcement to community. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership, and you're absolutely right. It's not the words, it's the actions. And I go out of my way, as I know each of us does, to make certain that the community knows all Houston residents are welcome to our facilities. The warming centers, no questions asked when you arrive. Domestic abuse, call HPD. They do not ask or concern themselves with your immigration status. After our club's closing, I've been there. A packed club is emptied. No one is asked about their status. It's strictly the safety of our community. So thank you for the role you've played, real leadership, but you're right. It's a process. We've got to continue to emphasize we care for all residents and do not ask them their immigration status, and we share their anxiety. Councilman Flickinger.
Thank you, Mayor. The fear that is felt by the public if you're not here with legal status is absolutely real. There's no doubt about that. But I've been a little confused with this entire issue. You know, we've had these chambers filled regularly with individuals coming here asking us to change policy. And in the New York Times and both the Chronicle several months ago, neither of those publications supportive of enforcing immigration policy. They gave the figures. 15,000 people have been deported out of the area ICE office, which is essentially southeast Texas. It's multiple counties. Of those 15,000, two-thirds, almost 10,000, ICE took into custody from a jail or prison. City of Houston doesn't operate jails. We don't have anything to do with that. What this is addressing is the approximately 70 cases that initiated with an HPD call, where HPD got a hit on a warrant. 70 out of 15,000. That is a rounding error. This ordinance, while I think placating a number of the people that came here over the last several months to speak, will not change what's going on. And I assume that we'll have these people back here within a couple of months once they realize nothing has changed. And a number of council members have talked about wanting HPD to focus on the tasks that we have for them. I would argue that maybe we should do the same thing. I mean, we've addressed a rounding error, and that's all this addresses. And I don't think that the people who were upset by it are going to be any happier 2-3 months down the road when they see that it hasn't changed. Thank you.
Thank you. And that region and those numbers comes from Southeast Texas, Austin, San Antonio, Corpus, Victoria, and the western side of Louisiana. It was really misinformation that only increases the anxiety and the
If I recall correctly, they called it Houston, which obviously it wasn't.
It's because we have the international airport and there's detention facilities in Conroe, but Houston proper, as you've reflected, has been a very small number because it's not something that HPD concerns itself with. HPD enforces state and local laws. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, and to my colleagues. I certainly want to make some comments regarding this ordinance. And let me begin by, first of all, elevating the fact that in all respect to everyone in the horseshoe around this issue, and I know there are people that have their feelings and emotions in it. I can go from several different directions regarding it, but I just want to be on the record to say that my greatest concern when I ran for office, and there are some around this horseshoe who ran equally, and everybody was asked what was the biggest concern in Houston, it was crime. And Mayor, when you took office, you said one of your first priorities was crime. I don't see this issue other than the fact that because it is a public safety issue. And so my biggest concern is how do we, and I want to pinpoint the fact that Councilmember Joaquin, my friend, used the proper word trust. Now, I would open it up to say, how many of us on this chamber would raise their hand and say you don't trust HPD? We pay these men and women every day. Some have offered to give more to help them with crime. Now, am I saying that every person they stop is a criminal? No. But their job is what we pay them to do. And it's a public safety issue. Now, everybody that come down and spoke, many people that expressed themselves, they have that right to do, and I protect that right. I wore the United States Army uniform to give everybody the right to protect the voice, which is their constitutional right. And if I had to do it again, I would do it again. But let me just say this. But when we hear things about an event, this is a movement. I've never, since I've been here at this council, I've never voted on a movement. I thought we were a body that votes based on ordinance on things that improve the city. But that bothers me because then it sends a message. That's my biggest concern. This sends a message to HPD, those men and women who get up every day and do what many of us dare not do. So with this, I trust HPD. I trust them for the job that they do, and I would hate that they would profile anybody based on their color or their language. Okay? So, but the truth of the matter is, if we can't trust them to abide by what their duties is, then don't call them when you get robbed. Don't call them when you have another issue. Where does the trust begin and where does it end? So I think that we've got to have a good conscious thought about how and what message do we send to the men and women who put their lives on the line each and every day. And I commend those who agreed to follow the ordinance, hey, I could basically address the fact about Hispanic Latinos. I go home every day. So I grew up in the community. So let's say it for the record. Let's put it on the record so anybody don't think that it's me against anybody. I was born in the movement of a civil rights movement, but I don't see this ordinance as a movement. I don't know we vote on movements. If that's the case, then all of us can introduce a movement. And I don't think it would be betterment of the city. I think Houston is in a good spot. Marion, I commend the administration and this department. You know, we're not Minnesota. We're not Chicago. I know, and I ain't just saying it, verbalizing. I lived there. 4 years I lived in the city. So, but for the record, I just hope and pray that we take good consideration, because I don't want this to be a Band-Aid on a shotgun wound.
Thank you for your perspective. I don't think there's any doubt, certainly from my perspective, that we support our men and women. We've increased and graduated over 800 cadets since you and I took office. HPD has all-time large number of officers, over 5,400. And I see this proposition as codifying their practices. The chief's directive will govern, and he's had excellent results from the model that we proposed almost a month ago. It's respecting the rights of citizens, allowing officers to do their job, and following the law, and that's what's expected. Councilmember Evans Shabazz.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, you know, I talked about an ordinance, but I want to commend my colleagues, Salinas, Kamen, and Pollard, for being about the change. And we know that a lot of these stops and whatever, they are based on racial profiling. And that is wrong. I don't care if you're black, brown, Asian, whatever the case may be. That is wrong. Mayor, I've watched you juggle to try to keep the city protected. And having a conscience about what's going on with people that are being taken into ICE custody. But what I don't like is that you are not, council member, going to pit us against HPD. It's never been a question of whether we trust HPD. It is the outcome of HPD turning innocent citizens over to ICE. And that's what I can't get past. So I am, again, commending my colleagues for moving forward. And I just want to say, just to bring something else to the light that really disturbed me the other night, I was watching The Factor. To find out that illegal immigrants are doing honest work for people, and then at the end, when it's time to get paid, they are being told they are not going to get paid, we're going to call ICE, or they call ICE, is appalling. And I just want to say, if you are doing that, it is a special place in hell for you, because you are a thief and you have no moral fiber. So I am certainly going to support this. It's very hard to look in the face of Councilmember Salinas and not, but certainly to look in the faces of all of the innocent people that are taken into custody. We have an obligation to do something and not to just sit here in a horseshoe and talk about it. So I am thankful that you all were about it, and I will certainly support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Castillo.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the council members who did the work around this ordinance to bring it forward. You know, one of the things that this addresses is transparency with the quarterly reporting. And this is an issue where, and like a lot of issues, more transparency is a good thing. Monday, I was speaking at a civic group, and questions were asked around this related to misinformation. Yesterday, speaking at a civic club, same thing. There's still questions out there that people are asking. There's still things that are going around and spreading that aren't true. This helps provide more transparency, which we all talk about in a number of ways as a good thing. And so I am going to be supporting this item. I appreciate my colleagues for doing the work to get this here in front of us because I do think it will help address something that will ultimately lead to building more trust and calming some of the fears, and that is an increased amount of transparency around a very complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ramirez.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to take the item out of order and to allow the council members who sponsored this to lay it out.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Did you want to be recognized, or you?
I'll have remarks, but after it's been laid out, Your Honor.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. Councilman Peck. Then we'll get back to laying out.
Yeah, let us call the item, and then we'll recognize the lead.
Okay,
Item 28 is an ordinance, just need a vote.
Councilman Peck.
No, Salinas.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to be recognized now, or would you like to hear from your colleagues?
I'm happy to do the vote and then speak about the ordinance.
Yeah, sure. And you'll get all the time you'd like. I was trying to give everyone an opportunity to speak.
Of course, if others want to speak beforehand, by all
I think
means.
it's very valuable to hear from your colleagues.
Of course, I don't mean to interrupt the conversation if others
we
want to speak.
We were doing it right. Go ahead, Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to begin by recognizing the importance of this issue and the concerns that have been raised. However, I think that the mayor's current policy requiring HPD to wait 30 minutes is sound, reasonable, and provides clear direction while balancing public safety and legal consequences. And taking away this guidance creates confusion and exposes the city of Houston to potential legal challenges. I am also concerned that this measure may create unintended risks to our public safety. Placing a national spotlight on Houston could lead to unsafe situations for both our community and law enforcement. For these reasons, I'm voting against this proposal. Public safety is my top priority. It has been and it continues to be. I remain committed to working with my colleagues on solutions that protect our community, uphold the law, and ensure Houston remains a safe place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pollard.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to everyone. A few comments. One, props to Councilmember Salinas for taking the lead on this. I think it was necessary based on the responses we were getting from the public by and large, not just those that you hear that come on Tuesdays, but the 50 organizations that signed on, the many people that I represent in the Gulfton-Sharpstown area who are hardworking, some are undocumented, but contribute in a meaningful way to the city of Houston. It was important for us to listen to them. Our only responsibility on this horseshoe is to listen, to represent the voices of those that we represent. And this is the power of Proposition A. But for this measure that the voters put in place, this ordinance may not have come to this body. It was necessary that when we were seeing no real action on this issue, that we had to take the Proposition A route to get some real movement. The 30-minute policy that is currently on the books could be very well seen as unconstitutional. The Fourth Amendment, which speaks to unlawful search and seizures, it will be hard to make an argument that past a certain point of the reason for the stop, do you have justification for holding someone? The city attorney will tell you that. Other legal scholars will tell you that. And so we have something that is currently adopted that could be challenged. And the whole point of a lawfulness review is to go forward to make sure that things are proper, they don't violate or conflict with state law, and that's what this ordinance does. So any any opposition to it after a lawfulness review, I don't see how you can get to that point. I think we also need to understand that we're the most diverse city in America, where 25% of our residents are foreign-born. And we have been known as an extremely welcoming city. You have to put policies in place to ensure that those residents who make our city great have the ability to thrive and succeed, regardless of status. I think the main public safety concern would be those who commit harm and who do danger in our communities. But if it is seen that a person who may be stopped for an offense and there's an administrative warrant for that person, and that person has no real criminal history, has no warrant signed by a judge for any criminal behavior, then it's safe to assume that this is one of the people who is in our city who may be undocumented that provide more benefit than not to our society. And none of us can be oblivious to the fact that there are thousands and thousands of people within the city of Houston without legal status that contribute in a meaningful way. Our city would not be who it is without them. The focus should be on criminals. When it comes to law enforcement, the focus should be on criminals, whether you're here legally or illegally. The focus should always be on those committing danger and harm to our community. And I support law enforcement in every effort to keep our community safe in that regard. But this particular proposal is to clear up any unconstitutionality that is currently on the books, to give clear guidelines on what the city is to do in these circumstances, and to provide some transparency to our body on those interactions. And I think it is thoughtful. I think it is necessary. And I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of leading the charge. Thank you.
Councilman Ramirez.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this measure because I believe it will make us all safer. Effective law enforcement requires that residents trust the police enough to report crimes. As a Harris County prosecutor for more than 30 years, I prosecuted countless murders, capital murders, and aggravated assault deadly weapon cases where immigrants were often necessary witnesses. I knew many were here illegally, but I needed their cooperation to keep violent criminals behind bars. Many were reluctant to come to court for fear they would be picked up. I had to convince them to trust that neither I nor anyone in court would call immigration authorities to come get them. I secured many convictions using their testimony. Never once did I call immigration authorities to turn them in. Every other prosecutor I knew did exactly the same thing. The immigrant community today, estimated at about 600,000 in Harris County alone, does not feel they can call HPD safely to report a crime without being held for ICE and deported. And when crimes go unreported, when people don't speak out for fear of being taken into custody, criminals go unpunished. I saw this firsthand. The current federal immigration dragnet and our HPD policy place our hardworking officers in an impossible position. Following policy, an officer called ICE on a battered woman who asked for protection. A woman stranded with her child at Houston Hobby Airport. A woman who flagged down an officer on Washington Avenue to report a crash. A woman whose car had caught fire on a freeway. And a man pulled over for a cracked windshield. Now, we can try all we want to convince the immigrant community that HPD has their back, but everyone knows that they're just a computer hit away from being deported. As a result, immigrants don't cooperate with police. Victims suffer in silence, crimes go unreported and our city is left safe. According to DA Sean Tier, as of December of last year, nearly a dozen criminal cases, including sexual assaults of children, were harmed because victims and witnesses were either deported or refused to participate because of their status. The question for this council is, do we want to have the most effective police force possible to enforce serious state crimes and city ordinances, one the immigrant community trusts, or do we want a deportation force that enforces federal rule violations? Because you can't have both. I know which one I want. Let me address some of the misinformation surrounding this proposal. It does not, repeat, does not prohibit communication between HPD and ICE. It does not create a sanctuary city. It does not allow criminals to go free. Immigrants who commit a Class B misdemeanor or above, or who have an outstanding criminal warrant, will still go to jail just like always. Some believe that undocumented immigrants are committing a crime just by being here. That's not true. In Arizona versus United States, the U.S. Supreme Court said, as a general rule, it is not a crime for a removable alien to remain present in the United States. That's why in February of last year, for the first time ever, ICE dumped more than 700,000 administrative warrants into the system alleging rule violations, not crimes. Anytime ICE wants to file an actual criminal warrant on an actual immigrant criminal, all they have to do is swear out an affidavit stating probable cause for a federal crime, take it to a real judge, and get them to sign it. This proposal does nothing to change that. This proposal does nothing more than tell our police department to follow the Fourth Amendment. The operative language in this proposal was lifted almost word for word straight out of a U.S. Supreme Court case. That's why our city attorney has said it is lawful, because it follows the Constitution. To the extent this issue has become about partisan politics, that is regrettable. These are nonpartisan positions we hold. The decisions we make as Houston City Council members should be about what's best for Houston residents. This shouldn't be about politics or fixing failed federal immigration policies. It's about sound local public policy. If I thought for a minute that it would make us less safe, I wouldn't support it. But our job is to give the hardworking men and women of HPD the tools they need to enforce state laws and city ordinances. I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
Councilman Kamen.
Councilmember Ramirez took a lot of what I wanted to say. First, colleagues, I want to thank Councilmember Salinas for her leadership, for coming in, hitting the ground running, and doing her due diligence in a highly professional way. And I want to thank Councilmember Pollard for joining as well. I also want to recognize council members like Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Evan Shabazz, who have had the energy and involvement on this issue of justice and public safety throughout our time on council. So I want to recognize just the collaborative nature of all of this. I also want to recognize the countless Houstonians, legal organizations, local groups, and unions using their voices to stand up for what is right. And while I could not disagree more with the legal department's determination on a portion of our proposal, specifically relating to giving police discretion, a discretion that they use every single day, despite that, it is imperative that we take action today. And I want to be very clear that there is more that must be done. As I have said from day one, If an individual poses a public safety risk, I trust local law enforcement. I trust HPD to act, regardless of someone's immigration status. Our officers work hard, and we appreciate their dedication to our city and our communities. But I'll also note that ICE agent training pales in comparison to the thorough and in-depth training and professionalism that we see in our HPD officers. ICE's lackluster standards and lack of accountability is what is creating chaos in our communities. And no, this is not a rounding error. These are people's lives. These are people's families. These are people's children, their wives, their mothers, their brothers. Raids that have occurred in our city, not just the region, in Southwest Houston, including in District C, are the basis of legal challenges that are ongoing right now brought by residents, including the fact that ICE continues to demand proof of citizenship by U.S. citizens. The mistrust is creating an even greater public safety risk, forcing victims of crime into the shadows, creating fear and trauma for our children and hurting our economy. Local law enforcement does not have the resources or the time to stand in and do ICE's job for them. A policy was recently implemented that said HPD will only wait 30 minutes for ICE. So above all else, what this item is about is the fact that the Constitution of the United States of America is not optional, be that 1 minute, 30 minutes, or an hour. There is no timer on when the Fourth Amendment goes into effect. This item is about respect for our laws, respect for the rule of law, and respect for everyday Houstonians who contribute to the fabric of our city and of our nation. And I want to express my appreciation to the numerous organizations and legal experts who have been working with us on this, residents who are speaking out at a time when many in our immigrant community cannot speak out for themselves. I want to recognize investigative journalists who are continuing to bring critical information to light, as well as local law enforcement for their commitment to our wonderful city. But we are not going to sit idly by amidst cruel, inhumane, and illegal actions by the federal government aimed at our vibrant immigrant community.
Councilman Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, the Constitution lays out that individuals should be protected from unreasonable search and seizures. I completely agree with that. I completely agree with transparency and the value of keeping statistics, absolutely. The concern that I have for this ordinance is some of the reporting requirements, specifically with identifying which officers, make these detentions and keeping track of that. Some officers, just based solely on the fact of what division they're assigned to, will encounter situations more than officers, assigned to a different division. And I'm just concerned that HPD officers may be afraid to do their jobs based on, tracking that information or identifying those officers. So we know HPD has an incredibly difficult job. We don't want to make it any harder. There are good things about this ordinance, and there are bad things about this ordinance, but I will be voting against it today. Thank you.
Councilman Salinas to close.
I just want to start by thanking all of my colleagues for their thoughtful engagement on this issue. I know it's taken time, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate the conversations we've had and the opportunity to bring this issue forward. Briefly, to respond to your concern, Councilmember Huffman, we are not asking for any publicly reported information beyond what already exists. There is currently a path portal where any Houston resident can look up an officer based on an anonymized ID. This ordinance would have that same anonymized ID reporting, so there is no concern about the disclosure of a particular HPD official to the public. It is just the same tracking we use through the path portal for a number of other items that are currently tracked by HPD. But I want to also echo Councilmember Kamen's concerns, and I strongly agree this is not the end of this issue. We need to continue the fight. I am committed to continuing the fight and working with legal organizations to push back on the city attorney's opinion. But today we have the opportunity to take a meaningful step forward, and I'm grateful for the support that I'm hearing around the horseshoe, and I say let's have a vote.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Roll call.
For sure. Mr. Secretary, call the roll.
Mayor Whitmire?
Yes.
Councilmember Peck?
No.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Kamen?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans Shabazz?
Yes.
Councilmember Flickinger?
No.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Councilmember Huffman?
No.
Councilmember Castillo?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Pollard?
Yes.
Councilmember Castex Tatum?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Carter? Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
And Councilmember Alcorn.
Yes.
Good job.
There being 12 ayes, 5 noes, passes.
Councilmember Kamen for comments after.
Councilman Kamen?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for the vote and for the discussion. And I'm not going to be here, so I would like to lay out for all of you and for the public pertaining to what Councilmember Salinas said about the work that needs to continue and my deep concerns and objections to City Legal's flawed and unsound opinion that restricts council action. The City Legal Department has prohibited a key component of this ordinance from moving forward today. And I want to be clear that what was passed is a step forward and needed to happen. But the proposal that was restricted would give local law enforcement discretion when contacting ICE for administrative warrants, which are civil, non-criminal requests. The debate that is happening around this horseshoe is a result of SB 4, which passed the state legislature in 2017. So this is not a new debate. But as passed, the focus was on detainer requests and ensuring cities do not prohibit local law enforcement from inquiring about someone's immigration status. And the legislative record of intent says just that. But the tactics, the blatant disregard for constitutional protections for respect of schools and hospitals, the racial profiling and improper treatment of Americans, the mass detention of individuals, both citizens and non-citizens alike, which is beginning to run parallel to the grim numbers of mass detentions during Japanese internment, compels us to act in defense of our communities and our local public safety resources. We are in an unprecedented time in our nation's history, and what we choose to do in the face of this matters. The original proposal we put forward does not conflict, nor does it run afoul of SB 4, which, to be clear, we are bound by. SB 4 says a locality cannot prohibit local law enforcement from adopting, enforcing, or endorsing a policy that prohibits or discourages the enforcement of immigration laws. And the key words here are prohibit and discourage. Discretion is something our officers use every single day. Discretion is not prohibition. Discretion does not materially limit or discourage. There is nothing in the plain language that we put forward that conflicts with SB 4. And there is no plausible interpretation that it does. Far too many Houstonians' lives are being destroyed right now for me to not point out how unsound the department's reasoning is. ICE's blatant disregard for the rule of law, the disregard of federal court orders, and disregard for standard best practices has put local law enforcement in a position that many of them do not want to be in, nor should they be in. It not only sows misfear and mistrust and forces victims into the shadows, it strains police resources and time. Our local law enforcement is not the enemy. They are here to keep us safe, and they do so with limited resources that are being stretched too thin because of what ICE has done in co-opting the systems that local law enforcement relies on. Again, we all know this around this horseshoe. We do not have the resources to step into the role of federal customs and immigration enforcement, and that is not the job of local police. The Fifth Circuit itself has said a city policy cannot violate SB 4 if it's an immigration-neutral policy about resource allocation, and the policy does not materially limit immigration law enforcement if it prohibits actions that the locality already lacks the power to lawfully perform. At the time SB 4 was passed, ICE had not dumped 700,000 administrative warrants into the NCIC TCIC system. What we're talking about are not holds or criminal warrants that local law enforcement are permitted to act upon. These are civil-based requests created by ICE agents themselves with no check on what's actually being entered into the system. A federal judge here in Texas, Judge Beery, in January, issued an order when 5-year-old Liam Ramos was sent from Minneapolis to Dilley, right here in our backyard. He said, quote, "Administrative warrants issued by the executive branch to itself do not pass probable cause muster. That is called the fox guarding the hen house. The Constitution requires an independent judicial officer." So I want to caution this body of a dangerous precedent that is being set. Council must not relinquish its authority on this or any other matter that may arise in the future. The City Legal Department's own opinion says under Article 6, Section 7A, Council shall have the authority to prescribe by ordinance rules and regulations governing the operation of each department. But the mayor may prescribe rules such as general rules and regulations as he may deem necessary or expedient for the general conduct of the administrative department, the heads of which are responsible to him. Again, council shall have the authority. It is wholly within this body's authority to enact policies surrounding this matter. And in fact, on the vote we just took, we did just that. And we have before when we eliminated traffic stop quotas. So this is no different. I have the utmost respect and appreciation for the City Legal's Department and the hardworking staff that serve this city. But City Legal, by their own admission, is not an independent department. In the same memo, attempting to restrict council with obsequious legal interpretations, it says, all city employees operate pursuant to the mayor's administrative control. It also goes on to say the mayor holds broad administrative and managerial authority over all city departments, employees, and operations. So again, the city's legal department is not independent, and the legal opinion is not independent. Voters approved Proposition A, adding new authority given to City Council. But I will say, since the mayor does control departments and legal says he has the power to take action, it is imperative that further immediate steps are taken to protect Houstonians and safeguard our public safety resources. Ken Paxton, Stephen Miller, and Donald Trump are not the compass that should guide this body. Our city has been put in an impossible position, but this is happening in our own backyard, and countless Houstonians, citizens and non-citizens alike, in the most diverse city in the nation are being targeted, facing egregious civil rights and due process violations. We are Texas. We should never cower or hide, especially when it comes to protecting the people that we serve. This is Houston, and we stand up for what is right. We respect the rule of law, we respect the diversity that makes us who we are, and we respect the rights of our residents. And when it comes to the rights of Houstonians, come and take it should be a defiant challenge, not an invitation.
Councilmember Salinas.
Colleagues, thank you for passing this ordinance. I just want to take a moment to thank every Houstonian that has used their voice over the past year to speak out on this issue. Today's victory is your victory. This is democracy in action. And I want to make clear in response to some of the comments, this is a very meaningful step. Today we have ended the 30-minute policy that allowed HPD to wait for ICE for 30 minutes. That is no longer the law of Houston. Today, if someone is pulled over and there is an administrative warrant, they have to issue the ticket, and once that ticket is issued, the individual must be let go. They cannot wait around for 30 minutes for ICE to arrive. This is a fundamental shift in policy, and I'm grateful to my colleagues for passing it. This is also significant because we are ending the opaqueness that has existed for over a year around how our tax dollars are being used to support ICE operations. We only learned because the chief of police happened to mention it in a press conference that 17 individuals had been turned over to ICE custody. But for his decision to make that press conference, we would have never known that fact. That will no longer be the case in the city of Houston. Now, the public will know on a quarterly basis how often somebody is pulled over and ICE is contacted, the length of the stop, the officers involved, the purpose of the stop, and if there are issues and violations of the Fourth Amendment, we will be able to address those. But the public deserves to know. And I strongly disagree that this is not addressing the fear in community. Just last night, I was at a super neighborhood meeting where an individual told me that her brother was detained and is currently in ICE custody after a traffic stop. She thanked us for pushing the ordinance, and so many Houstonians are grateful that we are acting. Many of you are right. We cannot change federal immigration policy, but we can control how HPD supports that policy. And today we took a step in the right direction to do closer to the bare minimum that's required under state law. But we should not be doing anything more than what state law requires. And I am committed to do everything in my power to fight the city attorney's wrong decision about administrative warrants, work with legal groups, and I hope the city attorney will be open to reconsidering his position when he realizes the error in the analysis that was provided. But this fight continues, but this win belongs to the community. So I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being brave, for standing up. It is not easy, but you did it, and this is democracy in action. Thank you, colleagues.